Hey everyone, welcome back to the Particle Accelerator podcast, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to accelerate their business and grow their team. I'm here with Kelsey. Kelsey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Ben. I'm Kelsey Stewart, Chief Growth Officer for Bloomin Blinds franchise. We're a window covering franchise, but we are a bit tech forward. I think that might have something to do with the invite here today, in an industry that is still ran on a notepad with a pencil behind your ear.
Let me get into some of our tech discussion here.
Sure.
I'm a CEO and a previous like a technical co-founder. So I love partnering with guys like you that have a vision and an idea and just love like making it happen. And so my curiosity, that's where my curiosity in this topic comes from. Well, what tech trends significantly impacted your industry and how has your company responded?
Well, again, I'm in the window covering industry as a widget. I'm in the franchising industry, so I've really kind of served two different masters. Um, the franchising industry, I would say the biggest tech need. Honestly, both of them are still very antiquated now that I think about it. The window covering industry is certainly tech. It's just slow. It's slow from adoption. Um, your mom and pop shops can't afford the cool modern technology. They have to wait for someone else to build it at scale so they can subscribe to it.
Sure.
And the franchising industry is still very fractured because you have brands who independently run their business. You have lead generation vehicles, or those that deliver lead generation. You have support pieces, but there's not really a good cohesive all-in-one solution. And so most franchising brands are split between a wide array of tech supporters or providers, because very few of them have gone through the trouble of building out their own pieces. It's very heavily reliant on third-party sources that subscriptions are then brought into the fold. Both of those are pain points, right? Like the thing that I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but we're currently building our own tech. When you onboard someone else's process, there's some part of your business that has to bend to fit that software. You've onboarded a particular scheduling tool or a CRM, and it's going to modify how you run your business because now you have to live within this predetermined environment of someone else's product. And by building out your own thing, not only do you get to solve for more of your pain points, but then the software or the product itself is then molded around your business. Mm-hmm. And that's probably been one of the more enjoyable surprises that we didn't know getting into this environment is how little we had to bend and didn't even occur to us previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I built a couple of SaaS. We built a SaaS workflow management called DocWorks, and we ended up selling it to DocMaster. So they're now the owners of it. But you'd think like there's workflow management softwares. Why not go use ShopMonkey or go use some Jobster or something that does workflow? But the marine industry was so different. You couldn't go use ShopMonkey because they would ask you, okay, well, an engine is either a V6, has a number of cylinders. Well, a lot of boats have multiple engines. So how are you going to document, which engine's being replaced or whatever? So we found that niche too, that a lot of times the industry specific CRM or workflow management software has not been built yet. And so you either end up with heavily customizing one that exists. We've rescued a lot of clients from like Salesforce gone wrong.
Right.
Just because they attempted to do that Salesforce retrofit and ended up with a monster. But yeah, I love it. So that's cool that you guys are started down that journey to create your own thing.
Yeah, and even both in the franchising and the window covering space, there are industry specific CRMs, but even then, you have to bend your business to fit into them at some level. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to get out of that for sure.
Cool. Well, what are some technology innovations that you're betting on to drive business growth?
Well, ours is all centered around AI. And in this case, we're not renting someone else's AI. I'm not taking chat GTP and, doing some adaptation where it's just a layer on top of it. We've actually found a company that has taken our data and created a small language model, and that is Bloomin Blinds specific, and then building a entire suite of vertical software, yeah, a vertical software platform right on top of the AI. The places where we expect the most benefit is going to be on the marketing side. Started to already roll that out and started to see that. So benefit to the franchise owners, higher quality leads, more leads, less expensive leads. And then the current build that it's all franchisee specific. So we haven't even gotten into the franchise operation side or the franchise development side where we're prospecting for new owners. This is so far the build out's been entirely franchisee specific because they really control our revenue through a royalty process. And so I'm expecting that it'll have a significant impact in the franchise owners understanding the cash flow analysis and being able to make strategic choices for their business. Most of our franchise owners are first-time business owners. And so we're taking these corporate refugees or the ambitious mom and pops, and we're helping them learn how to run a business, regardless of the widget. And so, giving them tools to help understand employee dynamics and retention, customer engagement and customer acquisition, and then cash flow management and strategic planning and goal setting. In 9 years of franchising, we haven't been able to develop tools that serve these needs with this level of intelligence and this speed of delivery previously. So I'm very excited to bring that to their world after almost a decade of not having it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're controlling, or the more leads you bring them, the happier they're going to be. But then 100%. I'm sure there's a set of challenges that they have with multiple client visits and all kinds of things that you can make a little bit sharper.
Well, and just the predictive analytics that can go into all these actions. If we are having trouble with multiple site visits and there shouldn't have been, we can begin to analyze, okay, is that an employee problem? Is that a training problem? Is it a manufacturer problem? Like, where are these problems occurring? Right now, we don't have the bandwidth to measure that. But by building this internal AI that can measure that, monitor it, provide feedback, and even corrective action as it gets trained up, like, there's a ton of insights to improve the business that normally would require human thought or attention that now can bring automation. And we can start to build out some of those finer details on how to improve the business without waiting for a human to be able to put mental energy towards it, hoping they got enough sleep or they don't have to take a potty break and they're not distracted while they're doing the evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Out of curiosity, the blinds, when we moved into our house a couple of years ago, we really we had a higher expectation for the blinds themselves. So I'm going to ask you a self-serving question just around that. Sure. They really are like IoT devices for your house. I guess I had this expectation of something very James Bond or, very future forward, which was, automatically opening and closing on a schedule. But then when I found out that really wasn't where the actual device of the blinds was, it was what I ended up with was like having to go around and load up the batteries on the things pretty frequently. And then there's like an RF remote. My wife still goes around every morning and pulls the cord on all these blinds. And yeah. I was like, but I made sure they were the tech enabled ones. And we've kind of forgone the idea of them being wireless or what have you. Where have you seen that go to, just for those of us that might relate to that desire to have, go into full lockdown mode or go into the good morning mode?
Yeah. Well, the intelligence in the motors has increased significantly in the last 2 or 3 years. So if you're talking about RF remotes and you're talking about AA batteries, you have an older generation of motors.
Okay, cool.
Had the blinds been planned for pre-construction, So before they sealed up the walls, we could have dropped down low voltage wires. You would have had it powered through the house. Even now, the standard is rechargeable, and with a 6-hour charge, you can get a blind to go up and down or rotate open and closed 400 to 800 times before you need another 6-hour charge.
Right.
So lithium ions come in there. Now the remotes are Wi-Fi. They're no longer RF. There are schedules and sequences. You can even, connect it through Alexa or Google Home and control them just by voice. And now in the most recent rollout, now all the Matter technology is getting woven into the motors as well. So connecting them to any level of home automation system where you've got a control panel, that's all coming into it now. And one particular manufacturer is now actually they've already set up two-way communication. So diagnosis of the motor and how is it performing? Where are the errors? Is it under too much load? Is it is it down to 50% capacity in terms of the motor wearing out? So now they're building in two-way communication so that the motor manufacturer can actually diagnose remotely any issues that are going with the motors.
Yeah, I would imagine like temperature sensing, light sensing, these kinds of things are also being introduced.
Yeah, again, in the last 2-3 years, they've become much more common for sure. Yeah, if the
Really
window
cool.
gets too hot, it'll draw the shade down to help cool off the window, etc.
Yeah, you mentioned a phrase there, matter technology, or something about matter. Tell me more about that.
I am not the in-depth, so I'll give you a high-level view.
Yeah.
But matter, at least in our world, I think this is beyond window coverings, but it's a new programming language. In our world, a window covering motor would have a specific language, and then it would, like, if you wanted to plug it into, say, a Control 4 home automation system, we would have to get a bridge to translate the language so that Control 4 could accept it. Matter is more of a universal language. So when you have two industries that are programmed with different communication languages, and I maybe that's not the right term, but that's what I've always been, I've heard used. Matter is kind of a universal translation that's already built into the language of the motor. And so you can connect non-associated motors all together. And even, I think it's even getting rolled into like your smart switches and all that stuff. It's becoming like the universal language of home automation.
IoT, yeah. Yeah, IoT, like marquees, high quality devices. Yeah, no, interesting. So these are getting a little bit of embedded, the devices are getting like embedded systems on them. It's really cool. Yeah, really neat. So there's actually something there to talk to rather than it just being a sensor waiting for a signal. That's really cool. Awesome. Well, I learned something, which is why I do the podcast. So thank you for that. That was a reward. Yeah. So what do you think the most significant gaps are between your ambitions and the realities today?
I think initially, especially as we started getting into weaving AI and just the environment in which we're building our own AI, it was the self-limiting expectations. The company that we hired will end up owning the tech, but we hired a third party who does nothing but build custom AI. And we, in our conversations about build out, we would start with, can we or could we? And every time we started a conversation with one of those two words, the guys would interrupt us mid-sentence with yes. Can we? Yes. Do you think we could? Yes. And it was their way of teaching us that the possibilities are infinite. It's just, what's it going to take and how long is it going to take to train it? But that was a big piece on the technology side that we had to kind of reprogram ourselves for. The other part is, again, not being an experienced builder on the tech side, managing that process, understanding how to communicate with those that are building the pieces that we are working with as the client, who's not a tech firm, the language, putting those, like our education and our breadth of vocabulary had to expand very quickly to make sure that we could communicate the needs and desires and goals of the project because if I don't know the vocabulary, then I can't communicate with them. And that's on us to get what we want out of it. Like there's a responsibility on our end to, I can't assume that they're going to be able to read my mind. So
Yeah.
I kind of, I had to meet them where they're at to get what I wanted out of it.
Yeah, that's great to recognize that. I find a lot of folks in your position, they want to speak results language and only results language, while the engineers on the software side want to speak solution language. And oftentimes those two, as we work with clients, we try to recognize, okay, was that a results question? Okay, let me answer the results question. And then not to like, hey, like a good example of a results question is by when will this be done? And a solution question will start talking about how the flex capacitor isn't flexy enough, and they're not answering the actual question that was asked. And so from both sides, you kind of have to know, okay, if that was a results one, then we need to give the brief, concise answer to when will this be done. Maybe we even need to ask some questions back. What is your definition of done? And keep it oriented around this results quadrant, not jump into a bunch of technical details that won't really help in that particular instance, and kind of get the right to proceed to go down the solution rabbit hole. Yeah, so we talk about that a lot internally: results language versus solution language, and making sure you know which realm you're supposed to be in that particular moment.
Yeah, and as the client, the fact that you're putting concerted effort into the education or understanding us where we're at, like if both parties are trying to meet each other where they're at, you're going to get to your end goal a lot faster and get to a point where you can communicate. So I applaud the effort on your end to try and meet the client on the non-technical side. Because if they're approaching it in our way and both parties are trying, like then nothing's going to get lost in translation.
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, what do you think the biggest challenge is for you to maintain your competitive edge?
I think it's just a restless pursuit of what's next. In the window covering space, we were the first ones in the industry to bring in iPads instead of notepads. We were the first ones to use lasers instead of tape measures. And we were the first ones to bring in a visualizer so I could render the products on on my iPad in the living room on the first appointment, like photorealistic movable objects. We're the first ones to bring all of those things into the window covering space 6 years ago. Well, now 6 years later, majority of the industry is starting to catch up to us, if not have, mimicked and copied exactly what we do. And so you just can't get to a point where you rest on your laurels, your previous victories. And it's especially as fast as tech changes these days, it's a little challenging or a little like there's some apprehension around, am I picking the right path? Because by the time you set down one direction, like the whole world could change underneath your feet. But that's the nimblest that's required if you're going to be a tech forward company in any industry, certainly in ours. You got to be willing to go down those roads.
Yeah, that reminded me of the BlackBerry movie. Well, the story of RIM and the company that owned BlackBerry. But there's last year there was a movie that came out, and I thought it was phenomenally done. I'm a sucker for any kind of true story, whatever that be. So any of these movies that have kind of told the dramatized true story of whatever. But BlackBerry was super good because it just, man, it was a really good device for its time. I mean, people were addicted. I was operating multiple businesses on my BlackBerry. It was phenomenal. But just to see the iPhone come out and just go like, it'll be fine. Right. And just get so disrupted by the next generation of device. And I wonder how many of us are kind of sitting here like that with AI, right? We're thinking, oh, I'm in a fairly manual, like I can't imagine if you had created your career as a copywriter, how you might be feeling right now. with AI.
Yeah,
Right around the
there's a lot
corner,
of
if not
industries.
present. Hmm.
Yeah, an Illustrator. Um, yeah, if you're a freelance blog writer, um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of industries. I have a 15-year-old. She's a sophomore, and so we're in conversation about college, and I'm like, look, like just whatever you do, you have to whatever path you want to pursue, you really have to put some thought into, can technology replace that? Um, I know the mantra behind our tech is to enhance the human relationship, not replace it. We're home services. I'm never going to like fully replace that human connection. So I'd like to enhance it. I'd like to make the experience better, faster, quicker. Um, but there's a lot of industries that are just resting on their laurels, just waiting to be replaced or praying that they can fear it away. Even in the franchising space, I've had franchisors, like owners of brands that are fully aware of what we're doing and the depth in which we're diving in, and they're still just sitting on their heels.
Hmm.
Um, and those companies, I think it's going to be really interesting because we're going to see I think we'll see a massive shift between the big companies that are committed to a process or they're financially handcuffed, and then the little nimble companies which are able to adopt and pivot into this advantageous software or tech environment. And over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, I think you're going to see a lot of the big companies come down and a lot of these little nimble companies turn into behemoths because there's just a uncompetitive marketplace when you add some of these advantages that the other guys can't or won't pivot into, or their PE firm won't let them do it because they're going to flip this thing in 3 years and they don't want to take the risk. There's a lot of reasons that a lot of companies are sitting still right now, but none of them are good.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think about that in the software space because creating a um, creating a clone of something is getting more and more trivial. Like we're seeing a pretty big increase in production time. Like we're able to write a lot of software in a fraction of the time, and so the ability to like type out code is really like that's going away. So if there was a small tool or a thing that you would have to typically subscribe to, kind of goes back to what you were saying. The barrier is so reduced to creating custom software for your business that works the way you want it to work. And I
Yep.
think AI is putting the nail in that coffin. Like there's no reason why you can't create the right custom solution for your business and have full control. And at some point in time, not day one, but at some point in time, you own that IP and you don't have expensive licensing costs. You may have to have some developers in the business for a long time, but those folks are also really helpful when it comes to organizing change, and organizing the details of your business.
Yeah, I think it'll be a seismic shift. It's just the world in which we've understood software development or management of those ongoing pieces. Yeah, anyone who's got a subscription-based model right now, like now's a good time to sell your company.
Love it. Well, how do you approach risk management when implementing a cutting edge technology? Talking about, really wanting to do that. How do you manage the risk?
That was a big question, because as a franchise, like I have families that have invested in the leadership that we provide and the direction and the course that we set for the entire brand. And these are not giant businesses. Like our average revenue is just under $500,000. And that's top line revenue. That's growth. That was gross sales. So these aren't giant companies that can weather a storm if we take the wrong turn. Like these are very sensitive organizations. And so that was important to us. We actually looked at more of the risk of not doing anything than the risk of doing it.
Right.
On a financial level, it wasn't cheap by any means, but when we looked at how much money we were sending out the door through subscriptions versus what would be recaptured by owning the software, um, the ROI was short enough that it really took a lot of the risk out of it from a corporate standpoint. From those that were writing the check, it was okay. Financially, this seems like a really good deal. Can we can we do it in a way that doesn't disrupt those franchise owners' business? And in a short amount of time, it becomes a net win. There's always some disruption, or like we redid the website and all the SEO, and so there's a step back while you rebuild. But trying to navigate that, it's just a careful analysis. But ultimately, there's no guarantees. You got to follow your gut.
I think if you get really like for the businesses like that, or when you're wanting to make an impact, you just have to get really good at communicating. Um, we started texting release notes at DocWorks, right? Like just sending out a text, hey, we've updated these two features. If you have any questions, let us know. Just making sure it's super clear that
Yeah.
we've made a change, not, well, if there's a problem, they'll contact us. Some proactive communication. But we found that if we did that, we could make changes like so much quicker because we weren't drinking from a fire hose of oh, you changed it and I don't, we're just really getting good at the comms around change, and then that allowed us to move quicker.
That's the communication is definitely a piece that we've put a lot of effort into. I think there's been opportunities where we could grow and learn from what we did or didn't do. But one of the coolest parts about it, again, as a franchise, normally when you take on a new software, it's already done and you kind of have to push it into their world. This one, because we're building it, we've set up a sequence where every 2 weeks we're meeting with the developers, we're going through what has changed in the last 2 weeks. They're watching it come alive. And it's the only environment where we've ever been able to let them come through the journey with us. So now owners are chomping at the bit. They're like, when can I have it? When can I have it? Versus, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
And that's been great.
Yeah, totally. That communication creates this healthy pressure for the next thing, for the new stuff, rather than it's funny how psychological, I think that's so psychological. Like if you cause people to react, it's generally going to be negative. But if you're proactive, then they're responding, and then it's generally positive. Like you just totally flip the script. Same actions are occurring. You're releasing new software, but it's just like you can by good communication, you can have it completely flip. You moved my cheese versus I want it. Like it's just so good.
Yeah, unintended benefit. Like we're going to learn from that and repeat that process. I mean, even what you're saying, it kind of resonates with, because we're doing a full rollout probably in about 2 months. We've already started the marketing side, but like the CRM software vertical stack, that's can. So I'm thinking about how I'm going to navigate these next 2 months, and I'm already starting to see like that text delivery and anticipatory updates, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't really roadmap that out yet, but there's definitely some pieces I can take from this conversation.
For sure. Cool. Well, what lessons have you learned from tech initiatives that failed to deliver expected value?
Most recently, we set a time frame for marketing execution before the pieces were built, and we ended up missing the mark by a week, and it just compressed everything. It confused all of the messaging, and we got wound up, we got excited, and we wanted to deliver, and we thought we could get it all done with plenty of time, and everything just took longer than it was supposed to. So most recent on my mind is get the piece done, test it, make sure it's set up properly, then begin to build up to a launch timeframe and get yourself there with everything waiting for you already in process or already in place.
Yeah, there's two kind of guiding principles that I use. One is no big bangs. So release frequent and often, don't build up this like huge body of work that drops like a rock. I mean, we're not shipping CDs anymore. There's no reason to do a big bang. Right. And then, so that's one. And then the other is just this idea of communicating as you go. But well, I had it and I lost it, to be honest. I had a good one and I lost it. The other principle, it'll come back to me, but it's just because you were talking, no parlay bets. So this idea of parlaying, like, oh, okay, I'm going to build it perfectly. And then right on the tail end of a perfect release, then I'm going to market. And you have the sequence of like, if you've ever done any sports betting, you like if one team wins, and then based on that outcome, then my bet is good for the next team to win, and
Mhm.
it raises the odds because it's riskier. You're kind of rolling the winnings of one game win to another, but you could basically bet, like a parlay bet would be like this horse is gonna be first, this horse is gonna be second, and this horse is gonna be third, and the odds are phenomenal because of course a bookie's like, yeah, chances of that are like
Right.
non-existent. But in baseball, football, it can actually be a really good way to have a good payday. In software, it's just anytime I see these parlay bets, it starts to get a little concerning that we need to see it, touch it, feel it, know that it's good before we start putting live users on it. And sometimes you can get away with that in a beta launch or something where you're kind of explaining the expectation is that, hey, this is new and we just want to get your feedback. Um, but yeah, rolling out a big, timing a big marketing. The parlay really comes in the timing, like one right after the other, and then you're not ready for any contingencies. And we have a client that's kind of in a parlay bet right now, and it always creates a lot of pressure, which is great. We love pressure. We feel like pressure is a gift, because it means that what we're doing is important. So the pressure
Mhm.
is a gift. We're just not sure that that's the best. Those parlay bets tend to be kind of counterproductive.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, risk. You might pull it off, and maybe everyone looks at you like you're the genius, but one little thing goes wrong, and all of a sudden you're an idiot.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Well, so how do you cultivate your culture? Just a culture of innovation and fluency. What's your tip there?
We've always talked about how we're going to innovate. As a franchise, we've been at this about 9 years. So we're still relatively young in the grand scheme of franchising. And so even today, we're talking about how, like, if you are looking for a franchise organization that's going to be that's already mature enough that they're tried and true, they're going to be the same for the next 10 or 15 years, even though I think that's a ridiculous, like, nobody should ever strive to be the same for the next 15 years. But the impression that we're introducing franchise owners into this culture, this business environment, is we are going to continually evolve. I need you comfortable and excited about these pivots versus grumbling, because if you trust us to lead you through these choices, these changes, um, you trusted me enough to come in and, you know, deposit a majority of your life savings or deploy a large amount of cash to come into this franchise world. Like, trust me until I fail you. That's another phrase that we use quite a bit. Is, even if you're nervous, have I failed you yet? And if I do fail you, it's on me to earn it back. But until then, you can be nervous, just don't let it get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So constant communication or storytelling, or just setting the impression, expectation that we are a company that will be evolving, that will be changing, and our goal is to be on the front of the curve, not the back of it.
Right. Love it. Well, what experience would you share or advice would you share with somebody beginning either their digital journey or their career journey, or getting into business, starting a business for the first time?
Well, digital journey and starting a business, I think, would probably require a handful of different suggestions. But as you were asking the question about the digital journey, um, the first thing that came to mind was an importance of learning the vocabulary. You need to take time to understand the components, maybe not how to execute them or what pieces, what levers need to be pulled, but you need, if you're going to hire somebody, if you're going to deploy your cash, or if you're going to take on a vendor, it's your responsibility to be able to communicate with them because you're bringing them into your world. Uh, and if you don't take that on as your own personal responsibility, and you're expecting the vendor or the one that you're contracted with to take on, like, I don't want that vendor to have to go through the educational process. I want them to be really good at what they do, and I don't want to slow them down with trying to teach me what they're good at. It's
Yeah.
my responsibility to make sure that I get the most out of them by not putting that burden on them. So I think the
Yeah. Great.
vocabulary is a real big responsibility.
Yeah, I remember the first venture, the first company my founder and I needed to raise money. It's probably about 15 years ago, but we really didn't have the investor module in our minds, nor really the capital, the kind of our to go hire an investment bank, or it just wasn't like that. We needed to go figure this out on our own. And we walked into the first angel investment meeting, and the guy asked, "Hey, what's your run rate or what's your burn rate?" And we answered with, run rate, like, oh, well, we have 100K in expenses a month, and they like everybody practically fell out of their chairs as if that was their burn rate, right? We didn't understand the investing vocabulary, and then almost as immediately as we saw their reaction, we realized that, oh no, sorry, no, we're actually cash neutral, like we're making money, like don't worry about that. We're doing about 150 in revenue every month. We spend anywhere from 100 to 150 in costs. We just answered the question wrong, but it was just the importance of knowing like your investor vocabulary in those conversations was like critical. Right. And there's no matrix to go plug yourself into, and know that you gotta kind of study it.
Yeah, it's the grit of business. We don't get to wear one hat. We don't get to go do one thing and call it a business. There's a lot of responsibilities on our part and a lot of different hats that we got to wear. And you got to be a master at all of them if you're going to run a big business.
I think there's a shout out too for knowing when you need to go get some help from a consultant or a mastermind group or something to give you that. If you're really in a hurry, there are people who have done that stuff before that can help you. Trying to grind it out on your own is kind of rough.
Yeah. Well, and we use the phrase build it or buy it. You're either going to build the vocabulary or you're going to buy it through, some paid help of some sort.
For sure. Yeah, that'll be great. I'm excited to talk about that. And I have a little bit of relevant experience. I have purchased blinds for my home before. And so hoping that there is light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd love to get to know you. And the way that I like to do that is ask, what was your first job? Like for me, it was a paper route. How'd you make your first dollar?
I was selling candy to kids in school. I got to a new school, didn't know anybody, and realized very, very quickly that there was this underground business of kids who were selling the atomic fireballs.
Nice.
And I saw how popular they were, and not knowing at the moment that I was kind of a natural business guy, I saw that as a pathway to start making connections, to get to know people, and ultimately to be popular in school. And so I started buying gumball or these atomic, fireballs at the grocery store, and then started creating better value propositions for kids at school, and ended up with a backpack full of change.
Nice. Love it. Yeah. I remember trying to
seventh grade.
Cool. Yeah. I remember trying to see how long you could hold one of those in your mouth before you needed a rest. Sounds like maybe you also, this is a risk, but I'm willing to take it. Do you remember pencil battles? Was that going around and around the same time, trying to break each other's pencils?
Yeah, I remember the game. We didn't turn it into any sort of business or like there was no financial benefit to it. It was just see who could crack people's pencils. Yeah, I remember that for sure.
I think the school made some pretty good cash on that, though. They had a little pencil dispensary, quarter per pencil. But that took me back to then.
Yeah, and they had graphics on the side of them. You get a Snoopy pencil, or you get one with cars on it. Yeah, it was always a big deal on which ones you were going to get. Like, as if some of the graphics were made for better pencils than others.
Right. Cool. Well, what toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career-wise today?
The honest truth is, I have always been building little businesses. Well, I should say I have always been starting little businesses. I wasn't really much of a hobby guy. I always enjoyed numbers. As quickly as I could learn about spreadsheets, I always got into data. My brothers, I run the company with my two other brothers, and they're always on my tail about, Kelsey, you need a hobby. And the truth is, money is my favorite hobby, and it always has been.
Yeah, we're a lot like that. My wife calls me a hobbypreneur. My preneurs are my hobby. My daughter wanted a bounce house for her like fourth birthday. And so I was like looking through the Google on like, okay, well, what does it take? And then I just so happened to pop over to eBay and just see, well, what does a bounce house cost? It costs like a little less than 2 grand. I'm like, well, there you go. So yeah, rent out bounce houses. I got a boy one and a girl one. And so I get a bounce house for free. And it is fun on the weekends to set up the funnel for that and see how I can, consistently rent out the bounce houses.
Yep, there's been multiple items that I wanted for free that I basically created a business to self-fund. Um, some of them were fairly small, like a vending machine business. At one point, let's say I'm in high school and I have 16 vending machines scattered across the city in various Mexican restaurants.
Yeah.
In college, I had other consumables that I wanted for free that weren't necessarily as you didn't go get a business license for them.
Right, right.
Um, but that's another example of an environment in which I wanted that product for free and created a
Yeah,
business
love it.
around it.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah. The good old college days. Well, speaking of that, what was your favorite and least favorite course in school?
Ooh, my favorite was geology. It was, the study of rocks and how they're formed and all the like going through a canyon and looking at the different layers of rocks and thinking about the millenniums that go in between that. And I live in Texas now. Texas used to be an ocean floor at one point.
Yeah.
And I find that so incredibly fascinating. I wish I could just step back in time and watch the earth evolve over these millions of years. That would be like, if I could do one thing, that would be the thing that is impossible, but I wish I could do.
Yeah.
Something about that draws me to it.
Yeah.
My
I was in Colorado and I feel like geology ruined the mountains for me. But I think you just have a more positive outlook on it because like now all I see is sedimentary rock, volcanic rock, like, but it does give you back vocabulary to describe what you're seeing, which is awesome.
And I love sharing that information and that insight with my children. I have two girls, they're both teenagers right now. And to add that to their baseline of knowledge to help kind of expand what they're looking at beyond what a normal 12-year-old or a 15-year-old would look at. Like that's part of my joys as being a dad is
Yeah.
giving them that greater vision.
I love that. I love that. What was your least favorite course in school?
Um, I went to a small private Christian school, and so it was probably the Bible class. Um, as a entrepreneur, I don't really like being in environments where the rules are defined for me. I believe in making my own rules in a lot of cases. And it's not that I have an issue with the Bible or the religion that I was in school with. It's just that somebody else was telling me what to think and what to believe. And that is the only class that I ever got kicked out of. And I got kicked out of that class repeatedly. Um, so that would have to go down as the least favorite because someone else was telling me what to believe.
Cool. Well, what quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent free?
I think it would be Zig Ziglar. I heard this in high school, and it was, I may not nail it, but it was something to the effect of if you help enough people get what they want, you'll end up with yours.
Yeah, I like Zig Ziglar. Like sometimes you're the only person in your own corner. Sometimes you just got to be in your own corner, something like that. Yeah, like him. He's good. Well, what do you think the greatest invention was in the past 300 years?
It's got to be the computer. In terms of the most impactful, I think it's got to be the computer.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Um, yeah, so interesting. So did the faith-based Bible stuff stick? I noticed you mentioned evolution in terms of geology. So did it stick, or where do you sit now? Just interested because of those two.
Yeah. I guess I would probably call myself more spiritual than religious.
Okay.
Not that I'm in some, incense burning, temple, like it's just that idea of appreciating and desiring a concrete environment. So some of the stories that are prevalent throughout Christianity or throughout the Bible, I struggle with some of those. The believability and why if 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 God is the creator of all, I struggle with who created God. And if that is the case, then why did he wait? Or like, why this world at that moment in time was the singular documented appearance of his presence in Jesus? Like they're supposed, they're one and the same. I love all the morals behind it. I don't know that I totally buy into the character,
Hmm.
the the personification. I love all the morals, the how to live a good life, 100% on board with every single one of those pieces.
Hmm.
But sitting in a room and worshiping an individual by name, that part, I just, maybe it's because I'm not a follower by nature. I'm not quite entirely sure, and it's always been a struggle because I've been I was raised with it.
Hmm.
Um, that was the path that I was told to believe, and no one can prove it to me, and I struggle with that.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I would say I'm all in on that. Definitely a Christian. My faith in Jesus specifically drives a lot of what I do and my character. And of course, I'm putting my kids have all like progressed. Two of them are at Dallas Baptist University, and my two younger kids are in Christian private school. And so it's just a big part of what we do. And I love the book Evidence Demands a Verdict because it answers many of those questions
Hmm.
by Josh McDowell. Um, it is very interesting how historical it is. And there's a lot of things. It's very difficult. Um, if the kind of the logic here that C.S. Lewis uses is Lord, lunatic, or liar. So Jesus was he either is Lord, or he was a lunatic, or he was a liar. And one of the kind of the quick facts, because definitely we're off the rails in terms of what I usually cover on my podcast.
Good.
Um, but there were the people closest to him died a most of them died a martyr's death, and that
Mhm.
typically would not happen for something that was contrived. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, just I love that, and just appreciate you being honest and exposing that and what you believe, and I super enjoy that conversation.
Yeah, I struggle with any predetermined belief or tradition. So I struggle with Christmas, not because of the religious side, the event, the gift giving, especially the gift giving, gifts of obligation bother the heck out of me. Um, all the you name any given tradition, if I didn't adopt it and I was just simply told that I was supposed to go with it, by nature I rebel.
Yeah, I
And
love
again,
that.
it's not even a religious defining piece. It's anything that I didn't adopt and the world just tries to put on me. Again, it's my entrepreneurial spirit, I think, but
Yeah.
I cannot enjoy being told what parameters I will live my life within.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think we're definitely, I think that's a good part of the human condition. And I think you would be in great company with most CEOs. Like
probably,
there's a certain percentage of CEOs are by force, meaning they're ex-cons. So that's the only way they're going to get a job. And then there's the great majority of us that don't necessarily have a criminal record, but they just don't like being told what to do, so they go start their own thing. And so really, that's really cool that you align that way. If you've had to share today, how should they connect with you?
well, yeah, I mean, if they're interested in Bloomin Blinds as a franchise, then probably bloominblinds.com, head over to the franchising side of the business and check out what we do. Um, if you want to connect with me personally, my name's Kelsey Stewart. You can search Bloomin Blinds, LinkedIn. I'm always on there. Happy to connect and make friends as broad of a spectrum as you would imagine.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it's been great to have you today. I really appreciate the conversation, and wish you the best. We'll excited to see what Bloomin' Blinds does.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate the invite.